Hi, welcome back to the Sounds Like Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Deborah Henne, and I'm here today with Joshua T. Berglan, who is known globally as the world's mayor. He's an international best-selling author in 4 countries, an award-winning show host, producer, voiceover artist, and omni-media creator. As the visionary behind the World's Mayor Experience platform, Joshua is dedicated to empowering individuals through media literacy, social justice, and economic development. Joshua's innovative approach includes his mentorship initiatives, such as the Mentorship Experience, where he helps aspiring creators and entrepreneurs navigate the rapidly evolving media landscape. As a certified SCORE mentor, he has guided countless entrepreneurs in achieving their dreams, while his own passion for service is exemplified through the creation of Bridge Media Empowerment Centers, providing underserved communities with access to media skills and opportunities for sustainable growth. Through his books, films, podcasts, and advocacy efforts, Joshua T. Berglan continues to leave a profound and lasting impact on a global scale, championing the power of storytelling and creativity to transform lives. Welcome, Joshua.
Hi there. I'm sorry my phone was ringing and making my head bobble worse.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
very sensitive to cell phone notifications as well as voices. That's why my head's bobbing. I'm not tweaking, I promise. So
Okay.
I just feel the cell phone notifications in my body and I forgot to silence my phone. So I apologize.
That's okay. So we just went through your bio and you have I know I got had the opportunity to be on your show a while ago and just had a fantastic time. And I had wanted to invite you back to be on my show to kind of share more of your story and how you got to where you are today.
Cool. Are you going to ask me questions? Um, Well, I here's the thing. I don't spend a lot of time wallowing in my past anymore because I gave my life to the Lord 10 years ago. And it was as simple as, not as simple. Um, I was locked up in LA County jail. I was facing 5 years in prison. I was put in a psych ward. And when I showed up there, I was high on cocaine and alcohol. I probably had an 8 ball in me and a bottle of tequila and was flying pretty high. For some reason, I thought it was a good idea when I was arrested to tell them I had HIV, thinking I was going to get special privileges. And they put me in the psych ward instead. There's no accidents. Um, I was locked in a cell with no one else. It was very small. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see around me. I could just hear the people I was surrounded by, the screams of madmen nonstop. Um, there was no distractions and nowhere to run. But fortunately, I was high as a kite for the first 24 hours or so. And it took 2 days in before I realized exactly where I was at and realized that I had thrown away every opportunity, every blessing, every gift, everything. I threw it all away. Um, and previously I'd already been in jail 5 times. I had HIV, had overdosed 6 times at that point. Had 2 failed marriages, lost the right to see my kids, gave them up for adoption because I was too much of a junkie to even try to be a father. I was an abuser. I was a walking nightmare. My double life as a drug addict had a double life of a very dark chemsex addict. Um, I mean, I can blame dissociative identity disorder. I can blame being molested and abused and all those other things. But frankly, the truth is, I'm pretty confident that I had multiple times and opportunities to turn my life around. But there was so much fear around people learning my secrets and learning about the things that I was doing. It was way too shameful. And it's funny. I can't believe there were so many different times in my life that I wanted to turn my life around, but the first time somebody a faggot piece of shit like your father, or you're always going to be this, or you're always going to be an abuser, you're always going to be, just something awful, and it'd be like, yeah, you're right, and then I would just go back to the wild life that I was living. It didn't take much to knock me off of my path. But the thing is that the consequences weren't severe enough to help me see what I was doing. It wasn't, the consequences were never bad enough for me to say, okay, that's enough. Like losing my kids wasn't enough. Being divorced, being bankrupt, being homeless, none of that stuff was enough. Overdoses weren't enough. All the other times in jail wasn't enough. But somehow that day, because I'd always gotten out of jail after 24 hours. Being there 2 days and having nowhere to run, I had a lot of time to reflect. Because having a dissociative condition, you don't ever feel any pain. You don't really ever feel the consequences of what's happening. I mean, I would disassociate when I was happy, so I never really got to hang on to too many emotions too long. But when I had nowhere to run, that's when I could start to hear God. And I started to realize all of the gifts and the blessings and the opportunities that I had thrown away. And that realization was pretty heavy. But what was really remarkable for me um, was was reading the Bible really for the first time. Because as I was reading Genesis and I was laughing hysterically because I thinking, who the heck believes this crap? It's just none of it made sense. Reading Revelations is not the book to read when you're locked in isolation and you're hearing madmen scream and I'm already, had already known what demons are like and, just in the spirit world. So, reading that book was not a good recipe, but, and I was kind of laughing at it all because it just seemed so silly. And, of course, the way those little tiny Bibles are written, it's not really exactly easy to understand. So I went to Proverbs and read Proverbs, and it's like, God, I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing that wrong. I'm doing all these things wrong. But that, just was a realization of just how bad I'd been living. And so I went to John, the book of John, and I read that. For some reason, that name popped in my head because, one of my good friends' name was John, and we had been arrested before together, and he had turned his life around. He became sober, and so like, John, okay. So I started reading John. That was really the first time I think I really ever understood the story of Jesus and what he came to do for us and show us. And, that started to kind of chip at the boulders on my shoulders and it started to speak to my heart a little bit. So I went back and I read Proverbs again. And as I was reading Proverbs, that was enough to piss me off. I was angry, started screaming at God. Like, why won't you fix me? Of course, I don't feel like yelling right now, but I was screaming at God. Why won't you fix me like you fix everyone else? And, I'd heard all these stories about God miraculously healing people and changing their lives like that. And I tried that 15 times. That crap didn't work for me. As I was screaming at God, why won't you fix me? I heard God say, you have to forgive your father. How in the am I supposed to do that? I was not above cursing at God. How do you expect me to do that after what he did to me, what he did to my sisters, my mom? How do you expect me to forgive him? It happened to him too. Hearing that rocked me because for the very first time in my life, I hated my father. I showed up an hour late to his funeral, high on cocaine because I'd been at a sex party the night before. till 6 a.m. doing blow, doing all kinds of ungodly things. Funeral started at 8, showed up at 9:15, high as a kite, just disgusted with the whole charade that it was. Like I hated my dad. I didn't care that I made a mockery of his funeral or was that I was late. But having compassion for him for the first time helped me also see that not only did I hate my father for essentially being what I was, but I actually realized that I was worse. I was far worse than he. So who was I to judge, you know? And that realization of these things that I was using to justify my anger and my rage and my hatred and my 20-year chemsex addiction and all those things, all of that stuff that I was, using as fuel to fuel my debauchery. He, I realized what I was doing. And so before I even asked my dad to forgive me, I realized pretty quick that I needed to start asking for forgiveness from him. And as I was doing that, I then turned to God and started asking forgiveness for myself and forgiving and also forgiving my dad too. But it was very powerful. But there was something very different after I started screaming and crying that I forgave my father and I wanted to be forgiven. As that was happening, the flood of visions that I used to have as a child and I'd had after every time of something traumatic happening to me, this life showing me these visions showing me a better life, a purposeful life, a meaningful life. It was that realization, or those visions. I began to understand that that was what God was showing me, a better life. God was showing me the life He had for me, the one that I'd been running from. And it became more true and more real in my spirit than ever before. I really understood that God was showing me what was possible for my life if I just chose it. And, there was no preacher there. There was no music. There was no nothing. No call. What do they call it? A curtain, not a curtain call, but an altar call. No altar call. But just simply, my life is no longer my own. Take my life. It's yours. I surrender. And I, of course, was screaming it and yelling it, and now understanding completely why I was locked away in isolation because I would have never done that in general population. But as I said, take my life, it's yours. I, I can't explain it, but I mean, I have explained it. And it sounds crazy even to this day to say, but as I said, take my life. My life is no longer my own. Take my life, it's yours. I swear I got hit with lightning on the top of my head and knocked on my butt and then lifted up like in a split second. And that experience was so supernatural and so profound that there was no denying that it happened. And my life was forever changed after that. Of course, I made a lot of promises to God when I was behind bars, that I would serve Him fully. I was all in. Whatever I was asked to do, I would do, even if it was behind bars. And I thought I was going to be there for 5 years. And I was fully committed to doing what I needed to do in jail. But I ended up getting out 5 days later with no charges. Didn't see the judge. And as I was walking the streets of downtown LA after I'd gotten out, going, well, gosh, those promises were a lot easier to make behind bars than now I'm back in downtown LA where all the mischief, I mean, I I got in trouble everywhere. It wasn't LA had nothing to do with it. Um, but still the promise was a lot easier to make. But it was real. It was a unlike all the other times before that I tried to, you know, turn my life around. It was all a head thing. But that day, everything changed for me, and there's been no looking back since. I mean, it hasn't. It. I will. I want to make this clear. It didn't make my life easier.
Yeah.
My life got more. My life. Listen, don't surrender your life to God, thinking your life is going to be easier.
True, right?
And it's
Yeah.
not. In fact, if you fully go in, if you fully surrender, that means that you also sacrifice your wants and what you think you need and all that other stuff, and you actually sacrifice all of your selfish ambitions too. And that means you're going to be used as a vessel. And when you sign up for that, that means that you will go through hell again, but you'll go through hell in a much different way than you were living it before. And I also would like to say that anyone else has ever fully surrendered their life, they can also tell you that they can talk to you about the joy in suffering.
Yeah.
And because when you find that, when you get to that place in your walk, nothing ever gets in your way. Nothing ever will stop you because you can go through anything and find joy.
Yeah.
Everything after that is just walking in faith. And I'm very fortunate that I got to that place in my walk because, as I said, it doesn't make life easier. If anything,
No.
it makes it much more challenging. But you also get to see who you really are and who you were created to be when you choose that life. And I got to tell you, as someone who didn't know my identity, full identity, until a year ago, because I quit disassociating finally.
Mm.
The tremors that I have now stop the disassociation. But that said, like, I'm so grateful for that journey, for this journey, the journey that I'm on. And I've been able to see miracles and blessings every single day because of it. And I'm grateful for that. It was the best decision I ever made, but it was also the most challenging.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story and your journey and for being very real and raw and vulnerable. Yeah, we're all definitely still on that journey. And I'm glad that you talked about, coming to that moment of surrender and then getting out 5 days later. Being like, well, I surrendered under these conditions and now this is unexpected because now I'm out here. And what does that look like? How do I keep that promise that I made, in very genuine promise that I made? And I like that you talked about how it was the hope and the joy in that, even though it's hard. And it's so true. If you give your life wholly to God, wholly being completely, completely to God, you're right. It gets really hard because you have to give up your comforts. You have to give up your own desires. And that's not easy. Sometimes he'll call you into a season and you'll be loving what you're doing for God. And then he calls you out of it. And you're like, wait a second. I was doing this for you. He's like, yep, now we're going to do this. And that's hard. There's a grief that goes with that. Um, and I'm glad you talked about that process too, that, it's okay to have those feelings and emotions as you are in that posture of surrender, whether it's your first time you're surrendering, and you have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive your dad. There's so many big emotions that go with that. And then, on the other side of that, now you're walking with God, but you're still surrendering. And sometimes there are emotions that go with that. Um, and it's okay. And I think people don't want to talk about that a lot. They want to talk about the process of surrender and the anger that can go with that, the grief that can go with that. Um, but as you said, the hope and the joy that comes with Christ gets you through it and gets you to the other side. So thank you so much for sharing all for sharing your story. Now you are podcasting, you have a mentorship program. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I'm focused more on producing for others now. I can't, I started doing my broadcast again. I've done two in the last 6 months, though. And I used to do, sometimes three a day. Um, the more I talk, the more challenging the energy is inside my body. So I'm really focused more on elevating other people now. Been writing a lot of books. The blueprint I wrote it's the blueprint for the future of media, entertainment, and education and business. And it came from studying the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, their agendas and plans, all things that are taking shape now. Even with Trump in office, people thought that that was going to stop, but they have no clue what they're talking about. That Agenda 2030 is absolutely, and Agenda 21 for that matter, are playing out in real time. And it didn't really matter who the president was; it was going to happen and is happening, and then will continue to happen because every nation on the planet signed off. That's part of the United Nations signed off on this, so it's happening. And the last 4 or 5 years has really been about building the infrastructure while everyone was distracted for the new world. In the new world, the fourth industrial revolution is going to be a lot different, and most Americans are not ready for it. So instead of me being and I do share this, and I do make videos, and I teach and I educate on the subject. Um, there's only so much I can do broadcasting, and I realize that I can multiply much faster by pouring into other people. And so using the strategies that I created, the philosophy that I created, which is Media Company in a Box, which you can find on my website for free. If you go where it's published, you'll pay for it, but it's free on my website for people. Um, I've been really trying to teach and get the message out because I want to empower people with media literacy, and media literacy is not just deciphering between real and fake news. It's understanding how to use the media tools that are available to us to monetize our gifts, talents, and intellectual property, our life experience. And if you think about it, some of us that are disabled or mentally ill or have a prison record or any of those other things, we may struggle finding a good job. And so our options are very, very limited. However, the beauty of these changes that are coming, because anytime somebody brings forth a solution or a rule is created, there's always a hole in the rule. Like when Medicare comes and they decide that they want to slash the budget or the allowables for companies. So in other words, they pay less for the services that they used to. Well, when they do that, what happens is they think that they're saving money. But what actually happens is they end up creating an opportunity because you can't avoid it. So while some people look at Agenda 2030 as a way to enslave people, because there's that element to it, possibly, it also creates the opportunity for freedom. And my book is the Freedom Book. I created the solution to everyone's fears about Agenda 2030. And if you don't know what Agenda 2030 is or Agenda 21, probably good time to go on the United Nations website and read about it. Or just start watching events like Davos because they tell you exactly what's happening. And it's about time to get ready because the bio-digital convergence is happening in real time. If you don't know the meaning of that word, ever more reason why you should read Agenda 2030. It's also known as the Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Things, because the Internet of Things, we're part of those things that the Internet is attached to. And the bio-digital convergence started a long time ago, and a lot of people don't realize it. I do because I live with it. But the next round, this $500 billion investment into AI, has nothing to do about jobs and opportunities. It has everything to do with the merging of man and machine. The Daniel prophecy. That's happening. The beast system is in motion. It's happening. So if you believe the Bible to be what it is and everything that people claim it to be, then strap in, folks. The beast system's coming in. But the flip side to that, I want to say, there is absolutely an opportunity to not be a part of the beast system. And that's what my book is. Does it say the anti-beast system on it? No, not at all. Not at all, because that would be insane. But it is. It's the solution. Universal basic income is coming. How do you think you're going to get that? Do you think they're just going to give it to you for free because the robots now have taken everyone's job? Or do you think they're going to want something in trade? And if you understand smart cities and what that will be, you'll have to understand to access those smart cities, you're going to need a bioidentical marker, the chip. You're going to have to be able to show that you have all your vaccines and your health is okay. Because the other thing that's about to happen is we're about to have telekinesis because of this technology. So everyone's going to know everyone's stuff. And you know how Jesus talks? It's also in the Gospel of Thomas. It makes it a little bit more clear, but I know how some people are about that. Oh, it's not part of the Bible. You should read Gospel of Thomas and 1 Enoch if you want to know what's going on. Anyway, because the Bible keeps a lot of that out and it used to be there, you should probably go read it because this next phase that happens is going to be very disruptive. And people that are waiting around to have someone come rescue them, you're fooling yourself. You're supposed to take committed action into your purpose and what you were created for. Instead of worrying about who the president is and who the leaders are and all this other stuff and like, oh, I saw this on the news, I saw that on the news. The only thing that matters right now for all of you, and if you don't take my word seriously, I don't know what to tell you. But the most important thing that any one of you can do right now to be ready is start living the purpose you were created for. You know what it is. You know what you're supposed to do. But every time that you say, but I have this job and this job pays my bills and I got to do this, I got to go to work, and you hate your job, you hate what you're doing, you're not doing what you were created to do, and you know it, you are directly defying the purpose you were created for. So you can call yourself a Christian all day long, a God-loving, God-fearing person, but if you're not living in the purpose you were created for, you're defying the purpose you were created for. You're no different than anyone else that you want to call a sinner or a false prophet or any of that other stuff. Those of you that hate going to your jobs and all that, yeah, you are defying God. So the most important thing you can do, instead of worrying about AI being a demon or being a savior or any of that other stuff, is to truly, what, Mike, why is that screen popping everywhere? Sorry. I have screens popping up everywhere here. um, now is the time. There's never been a time in history that's better for us to pursue our dreams. The whole world it's set up for us. The technology is easily accessible. I don't care if you're disabled, if you're mentally ill, if you're a prisoner, you're a former trafficking victim, or you're the smartest person on the planet. The tools are available for everyone, and most of them are free. There is no reason not to pursue your dreams right now because the very thing that you're hanging on to is not going to be there much longer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's a big shift happening. 100%. I don't think it takes a prophet to see that coming.
No,
Um,
no,
but
I would not even
yeah,
call myself that at all.
take tools and get educated, take it to the Lord in prayer, take it to back to the Bible and in prayer. Just kind of real quick. Sometimes we hate our jobs because we're not supposed to be there. And sometimes we hate our jobs because there's a flesh issue. So we have to kind of take our hearts to the Lord to make sure that we are where we're supposed to be. Sometimes, there's a transitory season too. Like if you're called into something, but you're still standing where you were,
Yeah,
that can be really uncomfortable. So just so people are kind of, you know, taking it everything, and taking it as a whole before the Lord, that yes, we were each created with a destiny, with a purpose. Make sure you are doing the purpose. Sometimes there are negative emotions associated with a transitory stage, sometimes because you're not where you're supposed to be, and sometimes it's a flesh issue. So
100%.
You have
100%.
to take it before the Lord and maybe seek wise counsel from.
No. I actually reject that. The only person anyone should answer to is God.
Yeah.
Don't take my opinion. Don't take hers. You
Yeah.
don't take you and your only. You and your purpose is between you and God, and what you're
Correct.
supposed to do. Because if you listen to other people, you won't do what you're supposed to do, or you'll get confused and not act as fast, or you'll move too fast. Don't listen to other people about the decisions in your life. That is insane. You can have counsel and debate, but the answer is within. The
Yes,
God
the
is
answer
inside
is from
every
God.
one of us, and we don't talk about that enough as believers. We act like God is way above us and it's all this stuff. Bull crap. God is here now. It's in
Yes.
everything. It says it in the Bible. Why would anyone even try to argue this point? Christ is inside of us. So
Yes.
we should start treating each other better like God is inside of us. Because if we say we answer to God, then who are we treating each other like dog crap, regardless of what they believe? They may not have the same beliefs of you, but it doesn't give you the right to treat them like crap. Not at all. And as far as the decision making, we have too many church people that are we get inside people's heads. Oh, you false prophet, you false this, you false that. And like you're walking other people's walks. Walk your own walk before you try to walk someone else's. Because God will take people on journeys that are brutally painful, but sometimes your yapping and your opinions keep that person from being obedient to the call. The pressure, the Holy Spirit competitions. I'm more anointed than you. I got more of the Holy Spirit than you. My tongues are more powerful than yours. All that other horse crap. It just is awful. Like, quit competing. It's a personal relationship, period. And so when you start sharping in and giving people their opinions, I'm not talking about you, but when you start letting other people overrule what you know in your spirit to do, you're killing yourself. So quit listening to other people. Church people care too much about what other church people think. They care less about what God thinks. That's why some people stay in relationships that they shouldn't be in. That's why some people stay stuck. And if you choose God, guess what? You're going to be, and you truly choose God, you're probably going to get uprooted out of that situation. And there's going to be time in the wilderness where you're alone, where only God can hear you. But if you're letting other people overrule your thoughts and you're letting their opinion shape your walk, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. So I don't think everybody should have access in, like, for example, if I have a decision, of course I take it before the Lord. I'm married, so my husband and I take it to the Lord together as a couple, right? There are a very select few people that I'll talk to and ask them to pray with me about it. Now, ultimately,
That's powerful.
The decision is mine and my husband's, between us and the Lord. And there have been times that we've had to make hard decisions that our few people advised us against, using human wisdom. Good human wisdom, solid, but it wasn't God's word. And so we went forward with God's word, and they said, no, you shouldn't. But we prayed and we were in agreement, and God showed up, and it was awesome.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
But it is still good, I think. I mean, the Proverbs talks about wisdom and counsel. Not everybody. Maybe pick a couple people that you really trust, that you see their walk. Again, the decision is still between you and God, or if you're married, you and your spouse and God. But I do think there is wisdom in select counsel. Not everybody, because that's way too confusing and chaotic.
Oh, 100%.
That's really confusing and chaotic. And you
listen.
Yes, to the Lord.
When I wrote the book, which is my testimony, The Devil Inside Me, and made a movie. My entire church, it was completely blackballed. I shared a real testimony, and there was rough language in it, and there was vile abuse, and it was sex and all that, because that was my testimony. One of the biggest things that I resent about religiosity, or whatever the stinking word is the fact that we judge people on the testimonies that we we're supposed to celebrate salvations, but when someone gives their real testimony, we get all uncomfortable. Like, let me ask you, like, because people talk, well, I was a sinner and I used to look at porn, and like, does that really move anyone? Really? Like, at this point, as a society, we are numb to the word abuse. We are numb to domestic violence and child abuse. And yeah, you can say you care. You can say you care, but we're kind of desensitized to it all now, because if we weren't, we would be in the streets trying to do something about it. Like, we would be way more active in fighting against this and using our voices. We would speak up if we had been molested and abused. But like, we've desensitized it in a way so when we hear it, it doesn't affect people. And so there's no real authenticity in a lot of the testimonies that we get out. We need to feel the pain. Like, some of us, if I didn't feel the pain, I was never turning my life around. And those of us who know, like, about that, we've been through some stuff, we've been through different types of abuse. Well, we know what addiction is. We know what overdosing is like. We know what disease is. We know all of those feelings. We're not going to be moved by hearing, well, I was a sex addict and I used to have sex with hookers all the time and I did a lot of cocaine. Like, that doesn't move the needle. Some people need to feel it. So we should celebrate real, authentic testimonies. It's not glorifying it. We know the difference between glorifying something and not. But when I told the truth of my testimony, people were very uncomfortable to be around me. It wasn't like I was a child molester. I was a chemsex addict. I overdosed. I was an abuser. I was abused. I was confused about my sexuality for most of my life. I had multiple personalities. I wonder why. But being honest about all that was like, had people in the church turn their back on me. And then I was called a false prophet for telling the truth about my testimony. Really? Really? And then another thing too, like, I even doing some of the other ministries that I was a part of, when I would talk about having dissociative identity disorder, I was called a demon. Oh, you've got demons in you. You can't have Jesus inside of you and have DID, because that's not possible, because the Holy Spirit comes in and heals all that. Really? Really, you're qualified to say those things to people? And I know I'm kind of venting right now, but these happen to people. You know why? Because I meet with them every day. I meet with other people that were just like me, that have been rejected by the church. They don't feel safe. People don't feel safe to be themselves. And of course, we live in a world right now where, how do we know what anything is real? So I feel like we got to do a better job. Don't we celebrate sin? We don't celebrate people's, we don't do those things. But when someone comes and they're honest about their testimony, or they're honest about where they're at, they love the Lord, but they're struggling with mental health, or they're struggling with sexual identity issues, or instead of calling them names, hurtful things, and saying, oh, you can't possibly have Jesus in you, why don't you show them love? Because isn't that one of the greatest commandments? And we're not doing that. We're not loving each other where they're at. And let me tell you something. As someone, I didn't heal from DI. I've served the Lord all in for 10 years. I didn't heal from DID until a year ago. But part of my healing meant developing tremors that are frequency induced. Like, what a funny sense of humor that is. But that's just part of my journey. But at that time with DID, if you know anything about it, like, there's multiple personalities there. There's multiple alters. And the people that get that can't help it. It's not like they woke up and go, God, I want to be abused so bad. I want to be sexually abused and raped and physically abused. I want that so bad so I can develop multiple personalities. Like, come on. Right. No one signs up for that. And there's a lot of believers out there that have BPD, DID, bipolar disorder, any of these conditions, and they have some really dark times. So instead of judging them and calling them false prophets, why don't we just love on them and maybe help them find resources that can help them heal? Like
Yeah.
put more energy into that instead of criticizing them and trying to shoot down their walk. Because
Yeah.
walking with the Lord is messy and it's not, and especially when you're aware of your sin, it's one thing when you're not, but when you become aware of it, then you take on a whole new battle within yourself. It becomes a whole different part of the journey with God. It's hard enough just with one person and God to take that journey. They don't need other people that are supposed to be their brothers and sisters in Christ, treating them like dog crap and judging them
Hmm.
for their mistakes. What if they can't help it?
Yeah.
Like, we got to do better. We got to do better at loving people and being an example and stopping fighting on social media, arguing over what we think is right.
I agree 100%. It breaks my heart to hear that story. And I do agree, as a church, as a body of believers, we really need to step up the compassion and the love and have eyes of mercy instead of judgment. I mean, the Bible talks about mercy triumphs over judgment. And I pray that, and I pray that other people pray that prayer, that we can have eyes of mercy instead of judgment. And Jesus healed with compassion, not with judgment. He was moved with compassion, and because God loved us, he gave. And I think those are banners that we really need to be walking under and learn how to practically apply. I'm sorry all of that happened to
Oh,
you.
I'm grateful for it now because
Experience.
it,
Well,
it changed my
God
it
can
changed
work
my
all
whole
things for
relationship with God. It made my relationship better, but it took being hurt over and over and over again. But I'm grateful for it
I
now.
understand. I understand. I mean, God works all things for the good. I've been hurt, church hurt too, and God works it for amazing things in the heart. But that doesn't mean that each person can't be held accountable to press into love and kindness and
Mm.
mercy and compassion and look for growth in those areas. Well, I just want to bless you with
Mm.
the work that you're doing, the ministry, continued healing and growth.
Mm.
Check out his website, joshuatberglan.com. Lots of resources on there. Check
Hold
out
on,
his
really
book.
quick. Under the bookshelf tab, book number 2 is Media Company in a Box. That is free. That's available for all of you. That's the original blueprint. It's enjoyable to read and it's very helpful. It will have you prepared for the next 10 years.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, lots of resources on there. Go check out his website, joshuatberglan.com. And don't forget to swipe, tap, or click over to deborahhenne.com. Follow me on social on the X, Instagram, or Facebook at Deborah Henne Author. And let's not forget to tune into our thoughts to make sure they sound like Jesus's, so they sound like freedom.